to my dungeon.
Welcome to Kuldrin's Krypt. I'm your host, Master Kuldrin. If you're new to the show, we use our combined 30 years of experience to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions or visit the Krypt at kuldrinskrypt.com. On this episode of the Krypt, we're going to answer your questions. That's right. Over the past year and a half, listeners have sent in a lot of questions. These are the ones that come from FetLife. We will do another episode in the future from the ones based on email. We get so many responses. We love it. Keep it up. But first, Funsize. We're both in a great mood today. Any particular reason why?
I just had a great night's sleep. I was sick a couple weeks ago, and I'm really bouncing back and feeling better. So it's definitely got me in an upswing currently.
Yeah, you were pretty rough. I'm glad that you're doing better. It's good to have my co-host and friend back on the mic.
Yes, it really is.
All right. Well, now that we've got our greetings out of the way, let's hit those rules to love by. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, kinky, from the KNKI app, available on all platforms. That stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. And the quote from Mr. Paul Young, submission is not about authority and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. All right, so I have got permission from most everyone to say their fet names on here and give the question. So we'll throw these out and probably both of us will attack the questions head on, especially given the overcharged mood that we're both in today. So from one of my great friends that I've made in this podcast, FrostBiter, she asks, can one be primal and still be a sub and be trained?
Ooh, me first.
Have at it.
Okay, so yes, I know that I have certain primal tendencies, and I've been trained, and while I'm still a switch, I do have submissive moments. The biting, the clawing, even the way that I look at some people, whether they're dominant or submissive, it's still always there, this primal urge. So I'm going to go with yes, you can be primal and a sub and trained. What do you have to say about this, Kuldrin?
That was certainly my response to FrostBiter. I have known many that have been very primal and still be very submissive and trained. And you can take that in, like, if someone takes on the persona of a wolf, you know, you've got the pet training, the wolf training there that you can do, that it actually adds to the trainability of the submissive in some ways, or changes it up, makes it a little more fun and exciting to me personally. I love it. It's something really enjoyable for me. Next, this is another good friend of mine that I've made through the podcast. Haven't heard from her in a bit. I hope she's doing well. And Funsize, you are in such a bouncy mood today. I know you want to say her name, so.
And I'm not meaning this disrespectful. It's just my bouncy mood. NikNakPW.
And this is on ending a scene. So,
yeah, the question is, how is a scene that is naturally coming to an end called? Is there a different word used to let both the sub or bottom and anyone watching know that the scene has ended or is ending? Or is formally ending a scene generally reserved for performances? I'm going to let you take a dive at this one first, as we have very different opinions on this.
Well, I'm going to break this one up. How is a scene that is naturally coming to an end called? Well, it's naturally coming to an end, and that is very much a question that a lot of newer people ask, but it's usually, for me, such a natural progression that it is often a look from a check-in or something like that. Let's go ahead and take these individually as we go through them, and I'll give my answer. You give your answer?
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. So what would you say to that?
I would say that it can range from a look to something as simple as a touch. If you touch a person's shoulder or rub your hand down their arm, something that's going to signify a moment of comfort transversing from the scene into aftercare can be a really good step towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when in doubt, ask. I did that last night.
Always ask.
Yeah, I did that last night with somebody that I've only played with one other time. We've known each other for about a year and a half, but it was only the second time that we'd played. So she started kind of calling yellow quite a bit on a few things, or signaling yellow. She had a ball gag in. So from that, I kind of figured that she was starting to wear out. And I knew that she kind of liked short scenes. So I just leaned in and very quietly asked not to break the mood. And she signaled, yes, it was time. Moving on, is there a different word used to let both the sub or bottom and anyone watching know that the scene has ended or is ending? Funsize, I want to hear your answer on this one.
It can vary. Some people like to use the word red as a way to signify that something's stopping. Others don't like to use a word at all. Like I said, I prefer the touching method, whether I'm the top or the bottom for that scene. But you can use words. You can use pretty much any word that you want to use that will signify the end. You just need to discuss it and negotiate it beforehand.
Yeah, and she goes on to ask, or is this formally ending a scene generally reserved for performances? When I first received the questions from her, as I was reading this, I was thinking that one, it doesn't matter what the people watching, if they know, unless it's a performance. And then as I read on with her saying, or is this generally reserved for performance? That was where it really made sense to me, the question. And I would say when it comes to performance, there's not really any kind of words that are going to be called. Some would say that just about any time that I play, I'm putting on a performance because I'm such an exhibitionist. And last night, even though I leaned in and asked her if she was done, nobody around, and there was, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 people in the room. That may be grossly off in either direction. I don't really know because everyone disappeared except for her when I was playing with her. But everybody knew that when I got her blanket out of her bag that was laying right beside the St. Andrew's cross that we were playing on, and I put that over her shoulders, that the scene had ended. And at that point, I did kind of notice that the chatter in the room increased in volume. And that could have just been me, but they remain respectful as they always do at this particular dungeon. I love these folks. I've said that many, many times. But yeah, it's one of those things to me that if people are watching, it doesn't matter if they know exactly when it starts or when it ends. Any final thoughts on this question?
As far as performances go, because unlike you, I'm not an exhibitionist, whenever I need to end an actual performance, I like to give a hand signal, which is just my hand up, finger splayed with the back of my hand towards the crowd. And that's just my way of letting them know that everything has officially come to an end and that I'm going to go off with the person that I have scened with in order to perform aftercare, which isn't part of the performance for me.
Okay.
So that's just my way of doing things.
I like that. We've never discussed that before. That's cool.
Yep.
See, all of our years of experience, as we expressed in the beginning of the show, and we still learn from each other and everybody else. That's why I love these questions so much. So with that, jumping into the next one, Leora has questions about play parties. What kind of food should I really bring? This was for a dark party that she was attending. Are people going to go all out and be ultra creative, or can I just bring something generic like chips and dip? I've spent hours on Pinterest looking for simple but hopefully creative food ideas. For me, my answer to this would be contact the host and ask the host what kind of setting it's going to be. Now, this was her first dark party, her first party of any kind. So there was a lot of questions, but I would say just contact the host. Funsize?
I would say contact the host, but barring that, I've never seen anyone turn down chips and dips. So if you want to go simple, you can go simple. But at the same time, if you want to go creative and go all out and really show what you can do creatively with food, I don't see anyone turning that down either, because when it comes down to it, people at these kind of parties get hungry. They're going to appreciate the thought regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, her next question. What do I wear? I have some clothes that might be okay to wear, but if they're too revealing, or if no one else is wearing something like that, I have my corset, but is that going to be too cliche? Would I even be comfortable wearing that with who knows how many people there? Can I wear regular clothes? Would jeans and t-shirt be okay? Or if I'm not wearing kink wear, should I dress up really nice, or would that be out of place? These are a lot of really good questions and thoughts that go through people's mind the first time they go to a play party. What's your answer for that one? I mean, there's so many questions in there, but...
Okay, my answer to that is, like you said before, ask the host about appropriate wear for that particular party, because some will have different dress codes. On the other hand, you can always show up in jeans and t-shirt. You can change into something else. If you feel like wearing something like a corset is going to make you uncomfortable regardless, then don't wear it, or wear a t-shirt on top of it. But definitely don't feel like you have to dress up or be in some sort of fetish wear in order to go to something like this. You can show up and change clothes, but what it comes down to is what you're going to be comfortable comfortable in and what the host has asked you to wear.
Yeah, I found that typically if there's a firm dress code, then in the invitation, they will state it. So if it's not there and you have questions, and again, this was directed for very first time in this type of setting. So just ask, reach out to somebody, even if it's not the host, if it's somebody that you've connected with that has experience or has been to one of this host parties before, and you know that they're invited. Don't out a dark party if that's the case, or if it's just going to a local dungeon or something like that, whatever. But ask the questions. It's okay.
What I normally wear when I go to dark parties, either a pair of black jeans. I prefer black because if I get any fluids on it, it's not going to show as much. It's going to be a lot easier to clean. Or I wear black leather pants, and then I just throw on usually a black or a dark blue t-shirt. Nothing fancy.
I have one particular shirt that a dress shirt that I absolutely love that I tend to wear. You know, sometimes you just put on certain clothes and it just helps magnify a certain attitude or within yourself. That's how this particular shirt is. And of course, my buffalo leather pants, my leather boots, but not always. There are times when I'm wearing jeans and just a nice dress shirt of some type. And it depends on the setting, depends on the situation and who I'm going to play with, who's going to be there, because there are some cases where I'm absolutely going to wear leathers for some people that I'm planning to play with because I know that that's part of their particular love of the lifestyle, that they're a leather girl or leather woman.
I'm also going to add for the ladies out there, as far as undergarments go, make sure that when you get a bra to wear that it's not going to be too tightly constricting, especially if you're getting any kind of lashes on your back, because when you put that back on after play, if the straps or anything rub, it really can cause tearing or just a lot of discomfort.
Very good piece of advice. Ran into that last night. Thanks to a shared love of knife play.
Yep, that'll do it.
All right. Moving on to her next question. While I kind of figure what kinds of things I'll see just from being at Munches and hearing people talk, I'm still nervous about what kind of scenes there will actually be. Would anyone be upset if I walked away while they were doing stuff if it freaked me out? Would I be expected to participate in some level? If I got there and was too overwhelmed, would it be rude to leave? Should I have a buddy for my first play party?
Can I get this one first?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to the very last part of this set of questions. Should I have a buddy for my first play party? Yes, absolutely. Every single time. For anyone going to their first play party, take someone who is part of the community that is a trusted friend with you. This will make things go so much smoother. Even if it's their first play party too, it can make things a lot better for everybody. And then for the rest of it, if there's something you're uncomfortable with, you can walk away. You can quietly and politely excuse yourself. There have been times when foot fetishism has come up at parties that I've attended, and it makes me very uncomfortable because it is one of my hard limits, and I do excuse myself and walk away for the time being. And it's not seen as rude or as anything that's wrong. It's just something that does not appeal to me. And there will be things that you're going to run into that are like that, regardless of how long you're in the community. And then if you're too overwhelmed, it's not rude to leave. Just, again, thank the host if you get a chance to, and then politely excuse yourself. There's no rule that says you have to stay till the very end. There's no rule that says you have to participate in anything if you're not ready or you're not wanting to. It's all about your consent and what you make of it.
Yeah, I've often said here on the podcast and to many, many people in person, over emails, it's not Fight Club. If it's your first night, you don't have to fight. So go at your comfort level and don't let anybody push you into doing anything that you are not comfortable doing. I know you and I in the episode for your first play party, we talked about our recommendation of not playing at all. Go with the intent to not play for your first one. It needs to be a learning experience because chances are you are going to see things that you just didn't expect that are going to freak you out. And to reiterate what you've already said or readdress how you've already answered this with walking away from something that is freaking you out, like I said just moments ago, everybody in the room disappears. It was just me and the woman that I was playing with. And so I didn't notice anybody coming and going, and we were playing just right beside the door to the dungeon. So I'm sure that there were people walking out to smoke or socialize. I think somebody left during it. They had to work the next morning or this morning. So I didn't even notice. And that's going to be the general case, is people aren't even going to notice. So just as Funsize said, remain respectful and do what you have to do for yourself and your well-being. God, as I got into with our first play party, there were some things there that really freaked me out. And when we talked about it, I become a little over emotional regarding that. And if I would have had the good sense to walk away because it was too much for me at the time, I would have been a lot better off. Who's our next one from?
Our next one is from Donnie Meow. Love the name. And Donnie Meow asks, can you speak resources for clothing and jewelry for those in the BDSM community, such as collars, etc., also places for dungeon excursions? What do you got, Kuldrin?
Etsy, believe it or not, is a really good place for that. Pinterest, Amazon. If you Google whatever it is that you're looking for, what kind of clothing or accessories, I know Amazon has nice corsets that are really cheap. Their quality is okay, but they look really nice. They may not last you a long time, but it's a good place to start. And by really cheap, I mean 25 to $50. And they look really good. I bought my wife one. Collars, I love collarfactory.com.
Mm-hmm.
You build your own collars there. All you need is the measurements. Of course, they do cuffs. So if you want to do matching cuffs, that's a great place to start. Dungeon excursions. That one, if you're looking for a professional dungeon or a private membership dungeon, you can usually get on FetLife. If you do a search in FetLife for your city, you can usually find one there, if not multiple. And of course, going to Munches. Great resource there to find play spaces. That's my favorite place to find them unless I'm visiting a new city. Last week, I was down in Orlando and found a couple. And one of them I've heard of. It's internationally known, the Woodshed. They were celebrating their 10-year anniversary. It was actually one that was on my bucket list to go to, and I didn't even realize that it was in Orlando until I got down there and was looking. And unfortunately, I ended up not going because of the conference that I was at. But next year, it is definitely happening. What do you have for resources?
I like to use extremerestraints.com. They have a lot of the medical fetish equipment, including straitjackets. Love Honey. Love them for garter belts, silk hose, corsets, all of that. Plus you can get toys there. And then my other big one is hustlerhollywood.com. They have a lot of lingerie. I'm very into the very old 1920s classic look. So I'm a huge fan of those places. Mm-hmm. And as a side note for the collars, if anyone's wondering what kind of quality you get, I can tell you because Kuldrin actually did send me a collar from his recommendation when I was under consideration, and it is one of the nicest collars I've ever had the pleasure to own. So wonderful quality. Definitely check them out.
Yeah, they are amazing, and they're pretty quick too because they do build it. They don't have a big stock that they keep of standard things. It is you go online and you build every part of the collar or cuffs or whatever it is that you're building. You mentioned medical. One of my favorite medical suppliers, and it's because it is dirt cheap and the quality is good or great. Everything comes to you sterilized is shopmedvet.com. Scalpels, needles, whatever you're looking for. Great resource there. And I mean cheap, super cheap. So, and we'll put all these links in the show notes, of course. So you can find that at kuldrinskrypt.com/episodes. So our next question comes from LF. And this is one I did not have permission, so I'm not using their actual FET name. And this is a variety of questions. So we'll take these 6 questions one at a time. I noticed that you do not use whips. Is there some particular reason? Is it a bad idea for me, bottom, to bottom for whips? I do use whips now. I've gotten back into it, and I've stated this before, but the reason that I didn't is because I witnessed someone get a massive laceration from a single tail, and I quit using them for many, many years, like 20 years. I have since, just in the past year, really gotten back into using them. Very practiced, and it's part of my regular play. Is it bad for a sub or a bottom to bottom for whips? That depends on the person and their comfort level with it and the experience. Always vet the top or the dom that you're playing with to make sure that they have the proper training and experience with them. Funsize, I know this was directly pertaining to me, but I know you've got an opinion on this as well.
I top with whips. It's a very rare thing. I need a sub that I can vet well enough to know that they can take something like that. But I also keep up a constant practice of it. As far as bottoming for whips, I know a lot of people out there that have heard my experience as far as abuse goes are going to be pretty shocked to hear that I still bottom for whips. My old master actually got me back into it because he specifically trained and put in the work to help me get over that roadblock. I'm still very careful about who I bottom to as far as that goes and who I bottom to in general, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just a personal preference.
Yeah, I totally. The next one, what does that one?
It says, is it appropriate to ask a potential top to read my profile before we play? I'm going to say no. I actually require it. I now have a kinky profile for the app and one from Kinked, similar kinky BDSM dating apps. And I actually require that if you're going to approach me and talk to me at all, you have to read my profile. And I've actually turned several people away because they hadn't.
Yeah, I agree. And that was certainly my response is I think that you shouldn't have to ask them to read it. If they're interested, they should have already read it. And that's a good sign as to whether or not I'm going to play with somebody. Because if they're not making reference to some of the things in my profile, which with mine, they're going to ask questions about some of it. It just happens. And I make sure of that.
I would honestly be worried if someone didn't come to me and ask about mine because included in mine is blood fetishism. And that's a great big rack and prick thing right there. So if you're not going to ask me about it, then you're probably not going to be able to scene with me. And I will also turn away others that have nothing in their profile.
Yeah. And just for the new listeners that haven't heard some of our previous episodes and maybe new to the lifestyle, you mentioned rack and prick. Now, what do those stand for?
Rack is risk-aware consensual kink, and prick is personal risk-informed consensual kink.
That's right. We've got to be informed. We've got to know what's going on, in my opinion, and the opinion of most. Okay, so next, from LF, what are your requirements for a sub that make them so hard to find? Now, this is coming from a previous episode and a personal conversation that we had in a thread that must be 6,000 messages long. I have very strict requirements in a person to be my submissive. And that is because I know what I want, what I'm compatible with, and that's the only thing that's going to work. And trying to force anything else is setting up for failure. So that's why it's so hard to find somebody. I'm not just going to jump out there and, oh, you're pretty, you're nice, you're a heavy player, I'm going to throw a collar on you and call you mine. That's just not going to work. It's just not. So, Funsize, if I were to ask you that question, what would be your answer?
Well, the complete list of mine is actually listed on my husband's profile currently because we are seeking a submissive for the two of us to share.
Lovely.
And it's based off our goals for life, things that we need, what we need for our relationship. So it is going to be difficult to find because it is, instead of just one person trying to find some other person that's going to fit with what they need and their ideals, it's two people trying to find one person. And that makes it very difficult, especially since I'm also currently looking for a top for just me, which has a very different list of needs to be fulfilled. So that in itself can make it very difficult. And it's really based on where you're at as a person and what your needs are and what your goals for your life and for your future are.
Yeah. Some people just want that short time DS relationship. And as long as they're open about it when they go into it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, and I know for you, you're not looking for short term. You're looking for that unicorn, that lifelong
I'm seeking 2 lifelong partners.
Yeah.
I'm seeking a top that's lifelong, and I'm seeking a submissive that's lifelong.
And as you said, it's for 2 people. It's you and your husband, and it's the same with me and my wife. So that does certainly add another level of difficulty because you get all these personalities together, and you got this V going on or a triad happening. In your case, it would be a quad of sorts. A V with an offshoot.
Kind of like a Y. It would basically be a Y.
Yeah, a Y. So it gets, we live complicated lives to have all of our needs met.
Very.
All right, this next one. Funsize?
Okay, the next question is about Kuldrin's profile, and it says, I noticed oxygen deprivation and bloodletting as specialties of yours. My possibly incorrect understanding is that neither of these qualify as safe. Where does my mistake lie?
Okay, so again, in doing a 101 podcast and starting with safe, sane, consensual, and informed, as the rules to love by state, SSCI, this person, LF, is very correct in their assumption that oxygen deprivation or breath play and bloodletting is not safe, sane, and may be consensual because you can cause someone to go into cardiac arrest doing breath play in a very short amount of time. Now, working in the medical field and working with specialists, I have learned certain tricks, certain things to do that make it a little safer. Notice I said a little safer. It is still not exactly the safest thing to do, but I'm not grabbing hold of somebody and choking them until they pass out. In fact, I'm not choking them at all. And I'm not going to go into any detail because I don't want to give anybody any ideas and not actually train someone on it, because a little bit of information can be extremely dangerous, especially in this particular area. I never recommend that anybody new do any type of breath play. As I explained to LF about this, one of the things that I can say is that if you place your hand extremely loose, not gripping at all, not applying any pressure whatsoever around someone's neck, and you use fear play, so maybe a knife or something like that, that can add to the feeling of oxygen deprivation or breath play. But don't just do that. Some people have a really bad reaction to knives, and if they don't know that it's coming, then they could move wrong and end up cutting. And then you're into blood play or bloodletting and not even meaning to. And as far as bloodletting goes, with my experience in the medical field and my training outside of it and inside of it, it is not necessarily unsafe or insane the way that I do it. I'm not performing surgeries or anything like that. So there is a safer way to do that. Now, you always run the risk, and this is where rack and prick come into play, is infections and things like that. So before I will do this type of play with somebody, I either train them or make sure that they have the training and the understanding to know how to treat whatever we're doing afterwards, that they are able to perform that self aftercare to whatever wounds that may be made, whether it's a scratch or an incision with a scalpel or whatever. Funsize, what would be your response to this?
I agree. They're not safe. They're part of rack and prick play. They're part of edge play. And I will include, because you mostly talked about oxygen deprivation, I'm going to include a little more on bloodletting. And that is to say that you should screen every partner you've seen with for STDs and STIs, regardless of whether you bloodlet or not, but especially if you bloodlet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that everybody in the lifestyle should be doing every 3 months anyway. In the adult film industry, every 12 to 14 days it's done for active performers in the adult film industry?
I did not know that. I knew that the standard had gone up in the last couple of years since, what was his name? Great big African-American fellow, Steele something. Do you know who I'm talking about? He ended up getting syphilis and passing it around to 8 other actresses.
Yeah.
Before it got caught. So I know it's gone up since him.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember his name. Yeah, it is something still. And then there was the one that also passed around HIV because it wasn't caught in time, which is what got the condom law going in California. Mm-hmm. But anyway, one last thing on that oxygen deprivation. You said that I mainly focused on that one. And that is because that is one that a lot of people really love.
Yes.
But it's one of the most dangerous things that anybody can do. And I want to really drive that point home, that it is not something to just play with lightly. You really can and really easily send somebody into cardiac arrest in under 10 seconds, and I mean that. It can do this. It can send their body into shock, and don't do it. It is not for just newbies. And if you're learning from somebody, make sure it's somebody who is thoroughly trained, because it really is that dangerous. And for me to stress it like that, I know that all of our Krypters understand that I don't just do that, that it's when I get that serious about something, it really is that serious. So, all right. I feel that I've hammered that one enough because it's that important. Moving into the next one. In the case of a dark party, what should one do if something went wrong? Consent violation, safety problem, etc., that one does not consider capable of handling oneself and needs to be addressed after the fact. Well, you can go back to the previous 2 episodes. We address this there, but we can address it here as well. Funsize, consent violations at a dark party, because that does add a little bit of extra issue to it. How would you go about that?
Okay, first off, if you're injured, you need to make sure that you get the medical attention you need. Secondly, you need to report the incident to the officials. And from there, you're going to have to talk to others that were there and see if they are willing to step forward and help you present this particular violation to the authorities, or you're going to have to respect their wishes not to do so if they choose not to speak up and out themselves.
Now, what if it's not something that would necessarily be reportable? And this is treading some dangerous water, and what I'm about to say, this is highly controversial. But what if it's a mild consent violation that you just want to address with the person, or have someone address with the person that's to say, hey, I didn't agree to this and this happened. I need an apology, and it needs to be public or private or whatever, but something that you don't necessarily feel the need to report it because it hasn't harmed you that bad. Now, again.
Well, in that case, I get what you're meaning, and you're even treading into the ground of the honest mistake consent violations that we all occasionally make, unfortunately. I'm going to say that you can ask someone to be your mediator and to sit there and talk to this person with you. And it's often best to get a third-party mediator in these cases because emotions can run very high in these types of situations. So you can do that. You can ask the host to be your third-party mediator, or just someone that you both know from the community that is an unbiased, trustworthy source. They can sit there and talk these things out.
Yeah, you hit where I was going to go with that. And that is how this starts out in the case of a dark party. So that's what I would do. First, if I don't feel I can go to the person directly, contact the host, explain the situation to the host, and maybe they can play mediator or put you in contact, give you a recommendation of someone who can. So that is a really good place to start. And again, I know I'm kind of treading on some dangerous, controversial ground and saying that some violations are worse than others. Some need reporting, some don't. But that is really based on the person that has been violated and how they feel about it. But I also want to say that just because you're feeling like you shouldn't, reconsider and make sure that it actually is something that really doesn't need to be reported. Don't be ashamed of it. It's not your secret to keep if you've been violated. If somebody needs to go to jail for a violation, then they need to go to jail. And it's not your secret. Let it out there. I know it's going to be hard, but you'll find support in making that decision. All right, let's move on to something hopefully a little sunnier. I don't know. I haven't read these since I moved them over from FetLife. I have been practicing with my flogger on a pillow. Right now, I can hit the target pretty accurately if it's lying down, and I try to hit with the sides. With the ends on a standing target, I would say I'm just over 50% accurate. At what point should I look for someone to train me in person? I certainly have an answer for that. What would your answer be?
My answer would be whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Whenever you feel like you want to be trained in any area, whether it's a flogger or any other implement, go for it.
Mine would be when you get started. That way you don't develop bad habits. Bad habits are harder to break than no habits at all. So try to start as soon as you can. If you ask at Munches, if there's an implement that you're interested in, I guarantee you, no matter what it is, you go to a munch with 10 people and you throw the question out there, hey, who is good with using a single tail? There may be somebody there, or they're going to point you in the direction of someone. Or who is good with floggers? Who's good with the dragon tails or the dragon tongues, or a ball bat or canes or whatever the case may be? You'll find somebody. So I recommend to people, before they ever pick up the implement, to start training themselves, try to find somebody to help out with their training straight from the beginning. All right. That wraps up all of LF's questions. Who do we have next?
Next, we have Subtweet on travel bags. Had a random thought listening to episode 28 about traveling with the flogger. There are tail bags for fake horse tails, like real life horse competition show horses, that are designed to hold something that is designed in some ways like a flogger. It keeps the tail from hanging, pads, and protects it in some cases, and can be hung itself with the tail or flogger still tucked inside. Often, they have individual sleeves that keep fibers laying down in the correct direction. I have some links below for example. And below is listed 3 links of what these are like. Not really a question, but an amazing side note, and I know something that you and I have both looked into since receiving this message.
Not only have I looked into them, the bottom link there, which is doversaddlery.com, I purchased 2 of them. I no longer carry my guitar case. Yep, I know. Years of it, and I no longer carry it. It is now these 2 tail bags. Each one has 2 clips inside. I've put carabiners on them to easily snap my toys into place, and I got them embroidered fairly cheap on the website, so they come to me already embroidered with my name on it. They look beautiful. I love them, and extremely easy to carry. You just hang them up, unzip them. You got all your toys right there, readily available. I think for both of them, it may have been about $75 total, somewhere in there, for tax and shipping. But yeah, the links to that is in the show notes. Check out all 3 links. They are different, and you'll find different things there. That was just the one that I chose to go with. Digital Fox has a question about terminology, and I love this question. It says, when my wife and I were first considering going to an education station, we talked about how we wanted to act and what I wanted her to call me. I told her to call me Master, which she liked, but to only use that term for me. Anyone else can be Sir, Daddy, Mr., or what have you. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but would that be a faux pas in the community, or is this really only if I had Master in my scream name or demanded other people to call me that? If you don't mind, I'd like to jump on this one.
Go for it.
All right, because it's one of my pet peeves, but it's also something that I enjoy educating people on. Okay, so to answer this one, I'm actually going to read the exact response that I messaged him. So hello, and thank you for reaching out. I love hearing from listeners. As far as Master goes, that can be tricky. How I've always done it is that my slaves were to only address me as Master. But as we met people, I didn't want their skill or station to be disrespected, so my slaves would always include their name. So as an example, your wife would refer to you as Master, but would address me formally as Master Kuldrin if I required that of people, which I no longer do. As far as putting Master in a screen name goes, I highly recommend against doing that because it forces others to call you by an honorific that you may or may not have earned. Such a great question. If you don't mind, I'm going to add this to the list of listener questions for an episode and give you credit for it. Thanks again, and make sure to join the FetLife group for the show. So that is a very simple explanation of how I feel about that. Funsize, where do you stand on that one?
I don't like it in screen names because it does force honorifics. On the other hand, it can signify, especially if you're going into a chat room blind and you don't know anyone there, something like that in a screen name can signify whether the person that's listed just by their screen name over on the side of the page is going to be a top or a bottom. And that can certainly help ease things. As far as what you have your spouse, your partner call you, that's really between you and them. My husband has one that he prefers me to call him on the very extremely rare instances in which I bottomed to him. And I mean, extremely rare, maybe once a year, bottoming. But he prefers for me to call him my lord. And it's certainly nothing I would ever call anyone else. So, I mean, it's fun. It's kind of nice having things like that. That's very singular to that one person.
Yeah, and the message string goes on, and he did like the response to that because it is just solely for him in her calling him master.
Yes.
And adding the name of other people to make it formal does pay them respect. It shows respect for their station, but it is also not making it so personal. And he really likes that they do have this one name. And that's how it's been in my previous MS relationships. And so I definitely relate to how he feels about that. And I'm glad that I was able to help him out and give him something that was a little more personal and wouldn't put her in an awkward position either. Or him, because it can be awkward when meeting new people and trying to figure out the names. But that's another reason why I have gone away from the master part mostly. There are still a few. I know you from time to time will occasionally throw that in there, which I always feel so honored when you do because I have such high respect for you. And there are a few others. So it is nice occasionally, but it's certainly not a requirement for me.
It really is something that I use for you in moments of absolute respect.
Yes, and that is certainly noted and, again, very appreciated. Do you have any questions to add to this? Is there anything as we reach the end of the listener questions from my FetLife messages?
No, I think I will put together my list of questions to be added on a later episode because we get so many and they're really worth spending time on.
This may have been one of my favorite episodes to do because personal messages, and if you're listening and you're wondering where your question was that you emailed me or you posted one in our FetLife group, those are going to come out. I wanted to clear off the messages from my inbox first on FetLife and then move into the group chat and the emails. That is a massive task to go through those. So I was saving that for when I had a little more time. Things have been very busy lately. So I appreciate everyone's patience with me in getting these out. This is not Funsize's issue. This is purely mine. We record every Sunday, and taking the time to edit and make sure that it's actually listenable can be a little trying with everything that's been going on in my personal life. So I really appreciate everyone's patience and sticking with us through this. Hopefully these difficulties will come to an end soon, and I will be able to do what I want to do, which is a weekly episode come out same day, same time every week. So just thank you again. And I really, really appreciate all the support, all the questions. If it weren't for that, then Kuldrin's Krypt, a BDSM 101 podcast, would cease to exist. So thank you so very much for all that you do. And Funsize, you taking the time to put a lot of these episodes together, and the support that you offer me is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I truly do this because I deeply love the show and I deeply love our listeners and being able to share with them every week.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I got to have you here. You're just so awesome. Okay. Well, before we get wrapped up, it is time for that housekeeping. Thanks everyone for sticking in there with us. I'd like to thank our executive producer, Jeremiah, our senior producers, Matt and Kane Sin, our junior producers, K2SO, Irish Mountain Dragon, and the Accidental Trucker. If you would like to become one of our show producers, support us, go to the website, Kuldrin'sKrypt.com, click on the support tab, and you can find that information there. Secondly, to Lily at bdsmcontracts.org. They make some amazing MSDS contracts. Great way to sit down, work together on these things, find out what your hard and soft limits are. Of course, they have no actual legal standing, but it's really all about opening up the communication and learning about each other. You can get them in softbound, hardbound. They're beautiful books. And finally, whippingstripes.com. That's my personal maker of leather and paracord impact toys. Phenomenal products at cheap prices. It's crazy. Highly recommend it. Next week on the Krypt, we are going to get into
polyamory.
Oh, fun. I can't wait for that one. In the meantime, go to kuldrinscrypt.com for show notes, how to subscribe information, and the link to our FetLife group so you can take part in the conversation and be eligible for giveaways. While you're there, click on the Support Us tab to become one of our show producers. And if you sign up for the mailing list over on the right-hand side, show notes will be emailed to you as soon as the show is published. So don't miss out on that. I don't spam. I'm not going to send you a whole bunch of other stuff, maybe one extra one a month. That's it. All right. All of our contact information can be found at kuldrinscrypt.com. This has been Master Kuldrin and Funsize for kuldrinscrypt.com. Unearth the truth.